All right, so we're in Unit 8, Lesson 3. We're going to talk about the global side of agribusiness because agriculture is a global industry. We're all connected. And so we'll talk about how that side works. So, a common means of purchasing ag products in the international markets is through commodity exchange. So, that is an organization that buys and sells commodities. Remember, commodities are ag products. So, let's say like corn, under specific laws and using licensed brokers. Ag's not the only industry. A lot of natural resources and materials are used through commodity exchanges. And you may see like you can look up the commodity exchange markets and see the prices. So these kind of markets, they use futures, which is referred to as the future market. So a price is set before the product is delivered. So for those in ag, the advantage is it gives them a set price for their crops. It helps them from fluctuations in the market. So farmers can sign a contract at the beginning of the season. Say they're going to sell 10,000 bushels of corn for $5.50 a bushel. They know at the end of the season they're going to get $55,000. However, if the corn goes up to $6 a bushel, they don't get to take advantage of that because they're locked in. So that's futures contract. But on the other aspect, if it dropped to $3 a bushel, they're still going to get their $55,000 because they signed the contract. So the market for ag goods is complex as it's become global and technology's increasing all of these changes. So today, globalization is in full swing. We can't talk about ag markets without talking about the international influences. Each country has distinct patterns of food production and consumption, but food products move around the world with trends influenced by consumer demand, economics, concerns to the environment, political considerations, and more. You have to trace these trends over time to understand them. As population increases, the supply of food needs to increase to meet the needs of those people. The rate of population increase during the 60s and the 80s was 2%, but that growth rate has decreased to around 1% and is predicted to stay about that rate. As the global economy grows, people gain wealth and increase the amount they eat, which also increases the need for food production. So we're not just eating to survive, we're eating, for pleasure as well. So they not only consume more food, but they also consume products of higher value like meats and dairies. So the opposite trend is taking place in wealthier countries where concerns have been raised about obesity and health issues. So we're seeing a reduction of meat and sugar for those countries. So you're kind of getting both ends of the spectrum. So ag and international trade affect the health of the population in many countries. And as some nations in Asia have been in their consumption of meat and other high value products rise, they've seen obesity and related diseases as well. But hunger is still a problem for other countries. So ag production consumes large amounts of natural resources like water and land, and politics who get to control these resources. Sometimes these result in wars. So political factors can impact trade agreements, embargoes. An embargo is where they put a ban on a product. So in the 80s, it really hurt farmers whenever they put a ban on selling our products overseas because we were in a Cold War. We were going fighting with other countries. So farmers were not able to sell their products and they were going under. Another factor is climate change. That's another factor that agriculturalists have to deal with. So there's a lot of international trade and regulations that agriculturalists have to face and deal with, and it changes all the time, region to region. Food safety is something that's handled differently in all kinds of regions. So certain growing practices that can happen in the U.S. may not be okay in Europe, and Europe has stricter and different rules about GMOs and fertilizers. Different nations have different regulations. So you can find those regulations on the USDA or the NASDA. So the main goal, though, is that projected world population in 2050. We need to shift how we use these foods and try to grow to feed this growing population. So there's lots of different studies going on to um, how we can change these crops to make them edible, um, how we can increase them in the global marketplace. They're doing all that they can to figure out how to feed this population. So now let's shift and talk about Ag Business Management 101. The management of the price, supply, and demand described in the previous section is done as part of ag business. Ag business management is overseeing of ag businesses that make sure goals are met. So smaller operations, the farmer may handle this, but in larger, there's probably a huge staff that's dealing with this. So when starting an ag business or applying loans and grants, you need to develop a business plan, and that's a document that lays out the operational and financial plans for a business. Business plan is a proposal for what you're planning to do and how you plan to achieve it. So elements, you have the mission statement. That's going to tell me the purpose of your farm, project it's going to serve, the budget, what finances are you going to have, what are you going to need, the bill of materials, background and research, give location, history, the land, how are you going to execute your plan, schedule, how you're going to implement your plan, are these things going to happen, and then any necessary technical drawings, such as those that show equipment, crops, livestock, where everything's going to occur. So there's two kinds of decisions, operational and organizational. Operational are day-to-day running of the business, like when do we plant, what fertilizer do we use. Organizational deal with long-term, like is it worth taking on debt to purchase a new piece of technology to increase production. So both have financial implications, and both are very important. Part of good management is being decisive and setting priorities and tackling these problems. All right, so when you're in a business, you spend money as farmers and ranchers do. They hope to get returns in the form of a profit. Diminishing return is the point at which investing will not yield better results. So that's where if you put more money in, you're not going to get more out of it. So if a farmer invests in a new fertilizer and it increases crop yield by 10%, it's a good investment. However, it can only help so much because plants have no use for extra nutrients. Doubling the amount of fertilizer used will not result in a 20% yield. So, business is important for everyone in the ag industry, and agri-scientists are no exception. Like understanding markets, knowing how business decisions are made can help assist farmers and ranchers.